Well, hello there, amazing students. This is Dr. J, and welcome to week 4. Can you believe it? We're just plowing right through the course, and we're almost at the halfway point, which we will officially hit as we close week 4. Submissions are due this week on Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Make sure that you are on time. We have a lot to do this week, and I want to cover a nice overview of the submissions for this week so you're very clear on the expectations. But I do want to start with a couple of things that might be a little bit confusing to students, and that is the difference between defining something versus describing something, as I think in some cases students are getting a little bit confused on this too. They're not the same thing. And so I want to stress that so that we're encouraging students to describe more than define more. And I know sometimes they'll say define and describe, so make sure you are describing above all, but cover these things accordingly. And when we look at defining a term, a definition is simply the precise meaning of a word. If you look up something in the dictionary, for example, you might get like a 4 to 6 word definition that provides the general meaning of the word. And this is a simple, direct meaning. There's often one of them. And even though words might have multiple meanings, generally when we say define this word, we're giving the one meaning that's relevant to our definition or of the term. In this case, if we look at the word psychology, for example, it is the study of mind and behaviors, and that's the definition of psychology. When we talk about describing a term, we're really talking about a detailed explanation. It could be of the object, a person, a place, a symptom, a theory, a patient, but we want to provide a more detailed explanation. They're usually longer. 1-2 sentences provides more detail, paints a picture of the various nuances of it. And really, it just provides a lot more detail. It expands our knowledge and understanding of what that particular term is. In this case, if we talk about psychology, for example, it's a scientific study of the mind and the behaviors based on research and experimentation. Psychologists study and understand mental processes, brain function, and behavior. So you can see a description is a much more comprehensive picture of what it looks like, where a definition is a short bullet point. So keep this in mind this week and every week, quite honestly, as you progress through this class, that what we're really looking for in most cases is a description. So let me move forward into the weekly submission so I can describe the objectives this week so you have a clear understanding of what's expected through the course of the week. As we dive into this week, like any other week, make sure that you're diving into the resources first. And I can't stress this enough, gang. Please make sure you're doing your readings up front, because this is going to make it much easier for you to complete the submissions for the week. Now, also keep in mind, a number of these articles and videos are going to be highly supportive of you completing the assignments this week and every week. So just, again, make sure that you complete these first, go through these materials so that you're well prepared for the submissions this week. I do encourage you also to take a look at these supplemental materials. And I think you're going to find in a lot of cases, this is going to be pretty adequate to support you research-wise. Maybe we'll need a couple of things in a few areas, but this is going to definitely get you on track for success. We talk about the discussion this week. Don't forget, we do have a discussion this week. We're going to talk about, in your own words, define advocacy and describe its relevance to social change agencies. So as we go in this week, we want to talk about what it is and why, kind of paint that nuanced picture, why its relevance to social change agency, what aspects of your personality or lived experience inspire the advocate in you. So what is it that drives you to be a vocal advocate? Now, some students have already shared some of these things, so I'm looking forward to a very lively discussion this week, as people sometimes get very passionate about the things that they advocate for. So describe why you believe resilience and coping skills are critical to the success of an advocate. So advocates sometimes get beat down quite a bit and they just have to keep going no matter what. So Talk about some of these traits that are very critical to their success. Describe one simple way that you could advocate for a social cause in your workplace, group, or community that would not require significant time, energy, or resources. So how is it that you can be an advocate in your community, within your workplace, in your own daily life that's quick and easy and something that you can do on a regular basis? And please don't just talk about posts in social media. And finally, describe how advocacy and social transformation connects to one of the following programmatic themes, as we always tie everything back to the program themes: self-care, social justice, emotional intelligence, career connections, and so forth. So again, make sure you're addressing all these well in the discussion board and support your work with the research. That is always the best thing that you can do to reinforce your arguments, validate those statements with solid research. We talk about the video reflections for the week. Okay, you all have been doing these now. This will be the fourth one for this class, so make sure watch that video. It's about 10 minutes long, and then prepare 2 to 4 sentences. And as I've stressed, folks, the thing to really keep in mind on to use research or not research, as my quick general answer is, do we need research or not? Do we have to have references or not? The answer is always yes. It's always a good idea to support your statements, support your arguments with validated research. That way you're clear, I'm clear, we have a solid understanding of what it is that you're talking about and how you came to these conclusions. If you just purely talk about something from an opinion perspective, if you talk about a particular theory or intervention or a rationale that should have a reference and you don't have one, that of course will be a problem. But really what I want to really stress to you all is that some of this stuff, again, is subjective. So it's helpful that you reinforce to me how you got to the conclusion you've received or gotten to. So make sure that you're doing that, and that will make things very clear and simple in terms of grading. Before we get into the project, I do want to stress to you all to take a look at the PSY 491 course map for the projects. There are 3 projects in this class. We're submitting the first one this week. Project number 2 is due next week, so make sure you're outwardly focused and working toward that. But when you go to the sheet, you're going to see the submissions that factor into that first project, the submissions that factor into that second project. So that is one thing that will kind of help to get you on track for the submission. And here's the scenarios, and you're going to write roughly a paragraph for each one of these 5 questions. Okay, so let me stress this again. A paragraph typically is about 5 sentences or more. Now, I'm not necessarily a stickler for this, but based on what I've seen thus far in the class, based on grading a lot of student submissions over the years, it is often difficult for students to fully address things on the minimum side when we're talking about questions like this. So I would be encouraging you all to work toward expanding your ideas. The most important thing is that you answer, that you address the questions, that you fully address that question, because in some cases I've seen students partially answer the question. And so you do need to make sure you do that regardless of the length. Now, having said that, this is really probably about a 3-page submission, more or less. Maybe you've got half to 3/4 of a page in a paragraph for each one of these, and it will probably more or less be enough. But again, and I don't want to stress so much a word count or a page count or the size of your paragraphs as much as I want you to fully address the question. Describe the ways in which your personality traits have influenced the development of your social change identity. How has your lived experiences influenced the development of your social change idea? In which your social influences have influenced the development of your social change identity. And notice how each one of these is describe. Describe the ways in which your willingness to be psychologically vulnerable has influenced the development of your social change identity. So again, folks, make sure that you're providing a description, not just a definition of what this is. Paint a picture, share the nuances, Support your statements with valid and reliable research. Finally, describe the ways in which resilience, growth mindset, and emotional intelligence have each supported the personal growth that has contributed to the development of your social change identity. So make sure that you address all 5 of those. Make sure that you've got a good paragraph on each one of those. Make sure that your information is well supported. In some cases, you might be providing a personal opinion, which of course doesn't necessarily need research. But in most cases, you are going to talk about various theories or interventions. And so, in other words, paint a picture, provide supportive research that validates what it is you're saying, tie it in. You might say something to the effect, this theory is X, Y, and Z, and here is why I met this theory. And of course, you have a link to a reference that talks about what that particular theory is and some of the elements that talks about that you've addressed in your write-up. If you've done the research this week, you're well on track. You should have read through and reviewed in terms of videos some information that will help you along the way, and you'll have a lot of supportive information to do this. You're going to also rely on some of the things that you've submitted from the past 3 weeks or so in the class here, but do make sure you are creating new content, and do also make sure that you're incorporating any feedback you've received to make a nicer submission here. The 3 projects combined are very close to half of your grade for this class, so make sure you're giving it the time and attention that it deserves. Finally, before I sign off, gang, I do want to stress to you, in this announcement that's coming out with this video, down toward the bottom, I talk a little bit about primary, secondary, and tertiary research. You all should be using primary sources, primarily, no pun intended, in your submissions, in all of your submissions. Secondaries are okay. Please take a look at my notes, but we really should avoid tertiary sources when we're creating submissions at the college level. Most certainly for students at this level, we don't do that. Moving forward, we especially don't do that. But there are some students that are using tertiary sources for research in their submission. So please make sure to step up the quality of your research. You'll do much better. You'll have good information. You'll have some solid descriptions and definitions, if you will. But do also reach out if you need any support this week. This is Dr. J. I look forward to a great week in the discussion board, and I look forward to reading your submissions at the end of the week. Everybody have a great week.